So somebody knows they're broken, they're full of visceral fat. How do they begin to walk out of this?
I get all kinds of people coming to me, C-levels, major corporations. I got a couple cabinet members of the president's cabinet. People all walks of life, and like high performers, professional athletes. People have different motivations and different capabilities of what they're capable of taking on. So I give them as much as they're capable of doing and applying in their lives to help them out. The first and foremost thing I tell them to do is stop eating processed foods. Most humans are able to stop eating processed foods if you give them healthy food to eat, healthy meat, and I get people eating healthy fermented vegetables. But sometimes people can't start on the fermented vegetables. They got to eat healthy meat and broccoli and some of these other vegetables. I just get them to stop. We just stop eating the carrot cake and the glazed donuts. We start there and cut out processed foods. And then we start rolling back the bad influencers besides processed foods like stress, alcohol, poor sleep, and then one we haven't talked about this particular show, but we've addressed in the past, durational exercise. And people don't like hearing this, but like the bodybuilders don't like it when I go after them, because of their lifestyle and their particular forms of competition. If you're a competitive distance runner or a competitive cyclist, where you're running long, cycling long distances, like I don't know, going for the gold jersey, whatever that big bicycle rake is that Lance Armstrong was always winning.
Tour de France.
Those people, yeah, the Tour de France. That's exactly right. Sorry. Then you're going to accumulate more of this fat inside your body. But where do you not have it? Outside your body. Because when this fat accumulates inside, around your heart, in your muscles, and in your abdomen, it's being stripped away in the superficial. So they're really scrawny. And so marathoners, world-class marathoners, or people who have done marathons for decades are scrawny. They have low muscle and they have low superficial subcutaneous fat. Those cyclists have the scrawniest arms ever. Pathetic. They look like 8-year-old girl arms, and or 12-year-old boy arms. Just very scrawny. It doesn't have anything to do with the sex. It's just they look like children arms. Their legs are massive. They have hypertrophied their legs, but all of the inflammation that they have goes to sarcopenia, loss of muscle, and a loss of the superficial subcutaneous fat. So durational exercise is bad, stress is bad, alcohol is bad, poor sleep is bad. Those are big contributors. And then we get them eating healthy meat, and then we get them to do beneficially short bursts of stress. That which does not kill you and is not sustained is beneficial. So things like sprinting and fighting, the fight or flight scenario. Sympathetic blast, short periods of time, and you're done. So we get, some of those beneficial stress hormetics, some cold plunging, some saunas, some sunshine, some fasting, and then some maximum intensity exercise, fight or flight, those kind of things, and you'll begin to turn yourself around. But you really want to get those metrics. You want to get a baseline scan before you do this and see where your level of disease is, and then start the strategy, start improving yourself. And we got the most experience in the world. Right now, we're the best in the world. But I'll be honest with you, why is my practice in the best in the world at this, getting the best results? Not because we're the smartest. We've just been doing it longer. Nobody else is. But for God's sakes, I want competition. I want other men and women to find out about this because it's a big world. I can't take care of this world. I got 5 other doctors working with me, to help me out with all the people coming to me now. But listen, every medical practice in the world needs to know about these dangerous collections of fat, and almost none of them do. Go talk to a doctor. Can you please help me identify my fat around my heart and how to get rid of it? Well, that'll be a short discussion for sure.
All right, let's go a lot deeper into the diet piece. The basics are no processed foods. We know the microbiome matters. You mentioned fasting. Let's start out talking about your latest diet and what a day looks like.
What I recommend typically for my client patients, I mean, the ultimate diet, what I've found, Jesse, and people working one-on-one, doing a study multiple times, they do the study called an N of one, where I just study one person. And, the most interesting, important study, an N of one, is study that's done on you. So, if you have if you're the study subject, that gives you the most relevance because it's all about what happened to you. Did you improve or did you worsen? And it turns on your targets, what you're following. So, when it comes to the most important targets, the visceral fat, heart fat, muscle fat, deep subcutaneous fat, and the good stuff, muscle and superficial subcutaneous fat. What we have found to optimize those different structural targets, four of which are structural disease. One is beneficial tissue, or two, muscle and superficial subcutaneous fat, is putting people on what I call the living carnivore diet. So it's the carnivore diet plus not fruit and honey, fermented foods that are living with microbes. You could almost do this with just living water, like taking water from a glacier or a really pristine lake that has a zillion microbes floating around in that water in a symbiotic relationship. And that living water would consumed with meat would contribute to a better impact on your microbiome and a faster reduction of these dangerous fat depots than if you just ate meat. Now, how about my vegan fellow human beings that are eating vegan and vegetarian? What about that? Because they're rolling their eyes and they're just so passionate about fat. Well, I'm sorry that in every study that we looked at, meat accelerated the loss of these dangerous fats more quickly and more efficiently than the addition of like taking a carnivore person or somebody on this standard American diet that was omnivorous and eating just crappy food, meat and crappy vegetables and processed foods. If we put them on the pure vegan diet, they did, cut back on visceral fat and heart fat, but we could get them to accelerate that elimination, staying vegan by adding in the living portion of the diet, fermented foods. So if you're a vegan, cut out the processed foods. Quit kidding yourself that you're eating some kind of carrot cake muffin in the morning. It doesn't have any meat. Like, please, there's no animal product in this muffin, is there? And quit kidding yourself. It's disease causing. And substitute in, from your whole vegetables and what you're eating, um, fermented vegetables, fermented foods, and you will more quickly, you'll expedite to eliminate a visceral fat in your muscle, fat within your adjuvant. So whatever dietary strategy you are going to center on and start with, just adding in living cultured food, probiotic fermented foods, and not processed capsules, probiotic capsules. They're blowing up out there. I think I heard that supplements now have actually eclipsed pharmaceutical medicine. That people are buying more supplements than big pharma is selling medication. Because people want to change and they're putting their pocketbook and hope in capsules. But what you really want to put your hope in is in lifestyle. So that's what I'd recommend for diet. The living carnivore diet. The other way I sum it up is meat and microbes. You want to eat meat, the healthiest meat possible, with these beneficial microbes. And it's just the biggest criticism I have on our diet today is that regardless of whether you're vegan, vegetarian, or pure carnivore, we don't get these microbes into our bodies and on our bodies. That's what's missing. The microbiome, the collection of healthy microbes, mostly beneficial ones you want in your body and living on your body, is completely devoid of where we used to be 50,000 years ago.
We'll come back to the microbiome, but I want to stick on the vegan piece here. Point blank, have you ever scanned a healthy vegan Or have you taken somebody that has a lot of visceral fat, they're committed to that diet, and then seen them get down to zero or near zero where you are?
I've never seen a vegan get that low. They seem, I think it's because probably the sheer volume of food you got to eat um, when you're vegan, as opposed to a very nutrient dense smaller amount of meat. Vegans are eating larger volumes of things, that it's metabolically taxing. It's hard. You never see a piece of meat left in residual stool. If you defecate in the toilet, you never see, well, look, there's a little bit of my ribeye from last night. Meat is easily digested. We're designed to metabolize it, digest it very quickly. But very frequently you see vegetative matter residually still going through, because it's taxing and it's hard to to digest it. So I think the sheer physiological demands of the larger volumes of these more difficult forms of food that people are eating makes it harder for them to one really optimize their microbiome, and two, to eliminate that visceral fat. Where they looked at sequencing of microbes and also simultaneously markers of inflammation in the bloodstream. And I've already talked about how I don't like seeing that, but at least in these two groups of people, they looked at people that were eating a more animal based kind of keto diet, ones that were eating more vegetables and grains and fruit and stuff. And the sequencing shocked everybody that the microbes were more diverse in the more carbohydrate a limited restricted diet with a more meat base, and than they were in the fruit and vegetables and grain diet. And then secondly, the markers of inflammation, I think there were, if I remember correctly, there were like 10 to 20 markers. Every one of them was lower in the more keto meat-based diet group, and every one of them and the grains and carbohydrates, diverse group of fruits and vegetables and grains, every marker was unchanged. There was no improvement. So it really kind of startles the researchers and anybody who found that study, because the proposition that you actually increase your diversity of your microbes by decreasing the diversity of your diet, and you also simultaneously reduce the level of inflammation, at least in these temporary markers. Now, having just said that in the beginning, all of those inflammatory markers are present, are subject to confounding. But when you have so many people doing that, it reduces the potential for confounding. It helps to make it a little bit more reliable. But again, I'm trying to sell people on the N of one. Pay more attention about what's going on inside your body than what's going on inside studies of everybody else's.
Let's talk about hierarchy of meat. There's different types of meat, different cuts, different qualities. What's at the very top? And then what are the different meats that you eat?
Yeah. First of all, I like to eat the healthiest animal possible. Our ancestors, our great, 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 great grandparents, when they hunted, would hunt the very best animal in the herd, bison, or if I said enough greats, maybe megafauna, the woolly mammoth, which we hunted to extinction. So we definitely had a preference for eating woolly mammoths. That was some really good meat because we didn't hunt anything else to extinction. So the woolly mammoth got hunted to extinction, had a good source of meat. We would hunt the very best member of that herd because we learned that it was a higher nutrient value, and we paid attention to the fact, the impact when we were selective about that animal which we hunted. It impacted our health more. And so I try to leverage that principle today in modern day hunting, so to speak, by taking my client patients with me to shop with Sean. I call it shopping with Sean. We're going to go shop with Sean, which means we're going to do some hunting. Okay. Our weapons are going to be in our brain. We're going to use our senses to identify the single best cut of meat in this gigantic butcher counter. And then I take them through the characteristics of the different types of meat that are in there to help them get selected. So first and foremostly, you don't want to have a marbleized piece of meat. You don't want to be eating marbleized steak. So the example of this I give is in human beings. When I found out about this biomarker, this is an Olympic sprinter who has very low levels of myosteatosis. They do not have a lot of marbleization going on in their muscle, nor do they have it in their muscle of their abdomen. So you can see how pure this muscle is. It doesn't have any of that white streaks that this muscle up here has. That laid down of that inflammatory fat, muscle fat, fatty muscle replacement, myosteatosis. And look at it here. It almost looks, it doesn't look like a ribeye. It looks like Wagyu beef. And so this is disease in a human. It's disease in a cow. And nobody's talking about it. I got veterinarians who are clients. And they go, my God, I wish I could go back. They're retired now. I wish I could go back and be a veterinarian, knowing what I've learned from you. I'd be completely different. The vets agree with me. They're as jacked up and messed up as us allopathic physicians. They're trained to make money off these sick cows. And they told me, the one, I never made money off grass-fed cows. I didn't get called on them. I only got called on the grain-fed cows, the ones that were fed corn and grains and molasses. And today, sadly, dirty little secret, the ranchers are now feeding cows candy, human candy. It's one of the largest source of diversion of human candy in the industry is to cattle. Why? To cause this. So basically, Wagyu beef comes from, a breed of cattle that has a disease called myosteatosis, that manifestation. And then they're doing whatever they can to increase that muscle, that fat within the muscle to get more weight. And because the consumers, by and large, go and they buy that marbleized steak because Ruth Chris waiters and everybody in a steakhouse, well, madam, this steak has a beautiful marbleization pattern that gives it an exquisite nonsense. It's a diseased animal. You don't want to bring it into your body. You want to be eating the animal that has a lean appearance to it and then super healthy fat on the outside. Believe me, I'm a fat lover. I eat the healthy fat, but I know what bodies of fat are good, which is the superficial subcutaneous fat. And then I stay away from the myosteatosis. But I'm the only doctor, and besides in my practice now I'm teaching to, that figured it out first in humans. And if you saw this guy's legs, this guy's abdomen, if you saw what his body looked like, you'd be like, oh my God, I don't want to look like that. You don't want to act like that. This guy has a hard time getting out of the chairs. He can't sprint. He can't do hardly anything. This guy's an Olympic sprinter, world-class sprinter. So you want muscles like this. You want to eat meat that looks like that. No marbleization. So here's a little tip. You can go to a website, free commercial, because you're watching Jesse Chappus. Grab a pen and paper, go to this website, Piedmontese.com. Piedmontese. Piedmontese is a breed of cattle. It was bred. It has the lowest amount of marbleization out there. And you can go and use this code and buy it because you're watching Jesse. And now you're automatically thinking, okay, here comes some sales pitch. You ready? I'm not making any money. I promote this cattle because I am just sharing it to humanity. And I told them, I don't even get free meat from them. I get nothing from them. Nothing. No money. Okay. So trust me. I'm sharing this because it'll help you out. Use this code DRSEAN25. Dr. Sean 25. DRSEAN25. You'll get 25% off, not your first order. You ready? 25% off every order you take for the rest of your life when you use that code. That's how good, this because all the money's going to you. Nothing goes to Dr. Sean. I'm promoting because it's that good. So it's the lowest amount of marbleization, grass-fed, grass-finished. And until I find a better, source of meat out there, I'm going to promote them and tell my followers and my client patients to get that meat. So now you just say you're going to love that. Your audience are going to love that. And Zoom. Well, God, I'm glad I watched Jesse.
So when it comes to your diet, percentage wise, how much is beef? And then what are your favorite cuts?
Great question. So I by far prefer ruminant animals. And the reason is ruminants ferment vegetables, grass and plants, and they magically transform that grass, carbohydrates, and the phytonutrients locked up into that vegetable into a healthier form of rich, nutrient dense protein and fats that we humans basically get the plants and vegetables that have been better processed for us in the form of the flesh of that animal, fat and super healthy muscle. So I would say virtually 90 to 95%, I'd say 95% of what I eat is red meat from ruminants. I I don't I don't favor pork or even chicken because they're more inflammatory, not as healthy. The next thing I would eat more would I guess I occasionally I'll eat a very like a really pastured chicken. It doesn't taste particularly, soft and like the conventional type you almost get used to. But I will occasionally might eat a real pastured chicken. They're not sold. You really except for their eggs. They're more layers in the industry, as a practice goes. The other form of meat that I eat, and it's not really a meat, is fish. I eat a lot of seafood that's wild caught. So you want animals that are grass fed, grass finished, not finished with grain and corn and soy and candy, but same thing with farmed fish. They're fed those kind of crazy diets too, and I don't care if they're in a big net and in an ocean. They're farmed and they're not eating in a natural, completely natural environment or a natural source. Nature gives them the best instincts, what they should be going around, swimming around, eating. So I eat only wild caught seafood, wild caught fish, wild caught oysters, clams, shrimp, lobster, crab, like that. But I don't eat anything farmed. And then I probably, I got a second practice site down in Florida. So when I'm in Florida, I'm eating fresh seafood probably sometimes 3 days a week, but every other these all the other days, and even when I am eating seafood, those days I'm still eating ruminant meat, and I always consume fish or meat regardless, concomitantly with ferments to get those living microbes into my diet.
And are you still chewing those together? The way it was
I
before,
do.
it's not just the same meal, but you're actually taking bites and combining the two.
Yeah. So I co-masticate. The medical term for chewing is mastication. Use the masticators, your muscles of mastication to chew. And I'm mixing in. So you should be able to tell if you just eat meat, swallow it, then you eat ferments and swallow it. They're kind of like next to each other. But if you mix it in together, all of the bacteria, those living beneficial microbes from the fermented food, are surrounding perfectly that meat, and now you're delivering it in a completely different form. It's basically a mass of chewed up meat with saliva and enzymes from your salivary glands, parotid glands, and your beneficial microbes that you're putting in together, and it causes this really great bolus of food that goes down and contributes positively to your gastrointestinal tract. So very, very important to chew in that manner. And the other point I'll make is when you do that, you lose this visceral adiposity. You improve your appearance. I'm 62 years old. I'm in phenomenally good shape for a 62-year-old man. And I can hear visceral adiposity when people talk to me. And and you'll hear it in older people. They get a voice and just kind of get a little raspy. And I've been head of this company for this particular way, and they get a little bit older, and I'm getting ready to retire. Younger people are going to have to lead the way of this company. That's visceral adiposity affecting the laryngeal tissues, and it actually changes the intonation of your voice. And it's why we lose singers and performers and actors. Their appearance degrades and their voices degrade. But if we could educate the performing art community and everybody, not just business leaders and athletes, but the performers arts, we would have the treasure of their singing and their performing arts a lot longer. So it's really important. Anybody knows a famous singer, get to them. I will work to them for free just to increase public awareness about these dangerous fats that everybody else is completely ignoring.
And I know when it comes to fermented foods, diversity is key for you. You have a lot of different ferments in your fridge. Is the idea there to get different microbes from different ferments that'll then populate in your system?
Yeah. So I give people just an example. I tell them you want to basically recreate Noah's Ark. The Bible story about Noah and all the diverse animals, two of every species. You don't really need a lot of these ferments. You need more of a variety. So think less quantity, more quality, and diversity to the different types of ferments. So in my refrigerator, you're exactly right. I have about 30 different types of fermented foods in there, 30 different types of jars. So the only thing in my refrigerator, really, honest to God, is meat and fermented vegetables. There's nothing else in there. Fermented foods. So that would include fermented dairy. So blue cheeses, gargonzolas, roqueforts, aged Goudas, aged cheddars, Parmesan Reggiano. I got these, old world style cheese, but not Kraft American singles. Okay. That's just processed crap. That's like, milk solids and chemicals pressed in some kind of a weird way. And God knows how they make that stuff, but it's not fermented aged cheese the way, our great grandparents did in Europe and whatever. So you want to get those aged dairy, fermented dairy, yogurt, plain, unsweetened, whole milk, full fat, not processed. I don't even like Greek style yogurt because they're taking out the whey. They're changing it. It's really just a processed form to make it more palatable and more creamier in its texture. But they're taking away a portion of what nature has intended and purpose to be in there. So I have a ton of fermented vegetables, fermented products, fermented dairy, and meat in my refrigerator, and nothing else.
When you mentioned living water earlier, I noticed you alluding to the advantage there being the microbes. And it sounded like these fermented foods you're bringing in may be a hack because the water no longer contains the microbes. Did I catch something you're sharing there between the lines?
100,000%, Jesse Chavez. You nailed it. So the fermented foods today, for most of our existence, we didn't have fermented foods. We kind of figured it out, and they've been enduring for nobody knows quite how long when they started, but they've been around, and I think they're persistent because our bodies of water that we would have been able to access and would have just been drinking out of, we're kind of like dogs. We just drink out of creeks and streams because they weren't polluted. They didn't have a disrupted molecular biology and microcosm, a microbiome of itself. The streams and the rivers and lakes of the past were beautiful and optimizing. And we would eat meat and we'd have water and we'd drink it and we'd be eating the meat with these microbes and we'd get microbes off the animal, itself. We would field dress it, the hides and all those microbes get all over the meat. Now meat is sterile and disinfectants and chemicals. If you go into a USDA approved processing packaging facilities, like there's sprays and chemicals, everything going everywhere. And so we're missing by eliminating these beneficial microbes. So water, natural bodies of water are exploitable today. You just got to be selective about it. One that I continue to, offer my opinion about is ocean water. Ocean water is this huge, so literally, I live down in Naples, Florida for a substantial portion of the year, and I drink about 2 tablespoons of ocean water every single day. I drink that. And I'm harvesting microbes from this beautiful ocean that I get. Now, to be sure, there are, healthier bodies of water around the globe. I'm a little nervous about maybe drinking in Los Angeles around city sewer systems or something like that. But little kids go in the water in Los Angeles, they're knocked over by waves, and they're swallowing, half a cup of water, tons of it. They're not dropping dead with diarrheal illnesses and stuff like that. So I think a little bit of ocean water. The other interesting thing I'll share about ocean water is my strategies. I work to optimize the microbiome, so I study these microbes to achieve the eradication of fat. If you look at one collection of human beings, there's one collection I figured out as researcher that has more exposure to drinking ocean water than anything else. And the one collection of humans that drink more ocean water than any other person are surfers. Surfers. They drink it. Why? They wipe out. Every one of them. They always, go in and they come up choking and coughing. They're swallowing all this water, every one of them. And then let me ask you a question, ladies and gentlemen. How many surfers do you see that are fat and obese?
None that I can
Here's
think
another
of.
interesting thing. How many of them are attractive? Come on, come on, girls. Surfer guys are hot. You want to date a surfer if you're a girl. And if you're a guy and some chick is a surfer, they're beautiful. It's just that richness of those microbes going in and optimizing the microbiome. So my closing thought is your goal as a human being is to optimize your microbiome because it keeps you from forming this fat around your heart, fat in your abdomen, fat in your muscle, and it optimizes your muscles and your health, and it gives you a better quality of life. So the microbiome is everything.
And for surfing, you're going to be in the sun, which is nice. You're going to be
Yeah,
grounded when you're in the water. A lot of different benefits there.
there are those other benefits too. But the lifeguards, they're not as nearly as healthy, even they're out in the sun, as the surfers, because the lifeguards aren't drinking the water. There's a lot of funny looking lifeguards, but not too most of the surfers, and it's really dose dependent. The more that water gets them, the better they look.
I know you have your source when you're in Florida, but to go one layer deeper on this, if
Yeah.
you were surrounded by a couple of bodies of pristine water teeming with microbes, and this is what I was getting at before, do you feel if you're drinking that water on a daily basis, you wouldn't need the fermented vegetables?
Well, that's a precise question. And I think about it all the time. Is it an adequate substitution to the ferments to drink that water? It may have been in the past. I think it was. But I think today, in all sincerity, probably whatever bodies of water we get to just aren't adequate enough for us to get away from ferments. And the ferments, when we add them into the diet, have, Jesse, such a positive contribution and manifestation in our clients when they get started on it that I wouldn't want to risk it just to water. So I'd say do both until we get it figured out. But it's a brilliant question. God, you think like me so much. Yeah, all your questions. You're the best. You ask the very best questions. Love
Well,
it.
thank you. Last question, I promise, because
Yeah.
I know you got to go. But I want to come back to meat. You eat a lot of ruminant animals, a lot of beef. What about ground beef? Are you a fan? And then I want to make sure I hone in on cuts of meat when it comes to steak. What's your favorite?
Yeah. I do eat a lot of hamburger. I would say probably almost half of what I eat is hamburger. or at least a third of it. So I like hamburger because it's got a lot of good, healthy meat. I get the Piedmontese hamburger because all that fat is grass-fed, grass-finished nutrients. So I want to make sure I'm getting a lot of those cuts. And it gives me a little bit more eating tail to nose because hamburger tends to have a lot of grades, a lot of cuts that I otherwise wouldn't be able to get to enjoy. And then my other select cuts, I eat tons of them. I like, tri-tip. I like sirloin. I like ribeye. I like New York strip. If you're going into a restaurant, let's say, and you're not sure about the cut of meat, I'm sorry, the conditions of that animal, whether it's grass-fed, grass-finished, I would say spend a little more money and get the filet because it will have a little bit less inflammatory fat. Get the tenderloin or at least the New York strip and then cut the fat cap off because if that animal is grain fed, it probably that even that subcutaneous fat, the end cap, will be more chances be more inflammatory. So sometimes I do that if I know it's a grain fed kind of animal. So because I'm like crazy committed to my health. But if it's grass fed, grass finished, I'm eating every little bit of fat on that animal if I know it's super healthy, like a Piedmontese breed of cattle.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're going to want to head over here and catch the full episode. I'll see you over there.
I'm talking to you right now. If you got a chronic disease and you're not getting rid of your visceral fat, stop complaining. Don't wait for your doctor to tell you to do this because it's literally kept out of medical school. Just get rid of